Well, the NFL divisional round of the playoffs has wrapped up, and looking at my predictions from last week, I didn't get a whole lot right. However, I am going to look at the conference round of the playoffs and give you just my general thoughts on them. The Chiefs didn't really do a whole lot to impress against the Houston Texans. This was a game that they actually, I felt, fared a lot better against earlier in the season. They came out pretty slow. They benefited from some really poor special team play and some really questionable fouls and were able to put up some extra points on that. But aside from some of the extra plays that they were able to take advantage of, they didn't put up a lot of points against a Texans team that, you know, sometimes they play really hard and sometimes they play really soft. Maybe this was just a really good game for Houston's defense. That's what Patrick Mahomes said after the game, but it is still something to keep an eye on. One of their issues that they're experiencing is the run defense and the run game. Since week 11, they've allowed over 100 rushing yards 6 times. In the first 10 games, I'm pretty sure they only allowed about 1. So the run defense just in general hasn't been as strong as it was to start the season. And then the run game as well. They themselves are running, close to 50, 60, 70 yards in a game over the last couple weeks instead of the 100, 120 that they were rushing in the first half of the season. So rushing across the board has been an issue that they really need to address. Looking at a Buffalo team that this week pretty much just ran the ball. They really didn't ask Josh Allen to do a whole lot. That isn't to discredit Josh Allen in any way, because Josh Allen is also the best quarterback against the blitz, and the Chiefs are a team that love to blitz. He has 17 touchdowns to 2 interceptions and has only been sacked 6 times all season against the blitz. If the blitz is going to be successful against him, it has to come from schematic blitzes that are unblocked, something like a nickel off the edge that you can't really easily predict. If it's something like cover 0 and you're showing it, Josh Allen is going to take advantage of that almost every time. And then if you do send something like a corner or nickel blitz that does catch him off guard, the question becomes, can that person tackle Josh Allen? And that's a lot easier said than done. Now, I think the offense is a lot more high-powered than it was in Week 11. They had to ask Xavier Worthy to do a lot for the first 12, 13 games of the season. Once they brought in Hopkins, they were able to kind of ease that workload a little bit, but they've especially been able to ease it with Hollywood Brown in. Worthy is getting a lot more looks from the slot, a lot more free releases, and he's able to play to his strengths a lot more. So I think he's an overall much better player now in the system than he was 8 weeks ago. It's a pretty simple game plan for the Chiefs. Come out strong and grind out a win. The game's going to be close. You expect the defense to keep it close. You expect your offense to be able to put up enough points to keep it within 1 score. And I think just like before, it's going to come down to who has the ball last. If the Chiefs are up by 3 and they're in the red zone, they got to go for it. They got to score that touchdown. You got to make it a 2-score game late, just like the Bills did in that Week 11 matchup with the run by Josh Allen. It's all going to come down to a play like that, and I'm hoping it's going to be a really exciting game. Now, on the Bills side of the ball, they played a very clean, conservative game against Baltimore. They ran a lot, and when they passed, they didn't really ask Josh Allen to do too much. Now, the Ravens were the number 1 defense going into that week, looking at the back half of the season. So part of that could be just the defense was locking them up, and it was safer to just simply run the ball. But the way that they kind of died off in the second half, they only put up 6 points in the second half and almost allowed a Baltimore comeback despite all the turnovers. That is a little worrying on both the offense and defensive side. The defense did probably have their best game. This was a really tough offense to stop, and they were given opportunities to make plays, but you still have to make the play. And they did that every time. So kudos to the defense. They're going to have to keep doing that if they want a chance in Kansas City. One thing that has me worried watching that game, I looked at it, and the Bills are 5-3 on the road this season compared to their undefeated season at home. And there were several plays in that Baltimore game where the offense was getting the play call in late or getting adjusted late, and those are types of things that you can't get away with in Kansas City because of the noise. It's so much harder to make those adjustments at the line, and you'll be forced to burn timeouts early, and those timeouts are going to be really, really precious against Kansas City if it really does come down to a close 8-9 point game in the final 5 minutes. They had to play 2 top 5 defenses in Denver and Baltimore back-to-back weeks. They put up 27 plus points in both of those. So you would expect them to be able to put up somewhere around that against the Chiefs as well. On the defensive side, one of the things that I really have noticed lately is that Mahomes hasn't really been this like all elite quarterback against the blitz this year. Teams are blitzing him at the second lowest rate of any quarterback in the league. And against the blitz, he only has 6 big time throws. That's less than Bo Nix and Aaron Rodgers. And he's thrown 3 picks against them as well. I think a proper game plan going in could be to stifle the run early, force them into drop back pass situations, and then simply send some pressure and rally and tackle. You want to force the ball out quick, make them check down to Pacheco, check down to DeAndre Hopkins, Kelsey, make them complete short 3 air yard passes, and then just rally and tackle. And if they can pull that off and make them really have to grind it out, but grind it out through the air, that's where mistakes start to pop up. That's where you have Mahomes feel the pressure, like he needs to make a big play. He's going to turn down those looks, maybe take a shot deep and you get an interception, or hold onto the ball too long and you get a sack. Those are the types of plays that they need to force them into. I did just really quick want to show you guys one play that's been kind of rattling around my brain for a couple of years now. This is actually from the 2022 game between the Chiefs and the Bills. We're under a minute left. Bills are up by 4, and the Chiefs have a chance to go score a touchdown and steal the win here with a minute remaining. Things aren't going to go quite their way, though, this time. What the Bills are doing that I find so interesting is they have what in the college space they call MEG, which is man everywhere he goes. And that's going to be this corner up here at the top. He is manned up on this receiver. So wherever this guy goes, whatever he does, he is going to follow him. Otherwise, I think that they're in sort of a show cover 2, cover 3. These guys are going to go off in this direction, and this guy is going to come all the way back here and cover over the top. He's going to the flat, and then these guys drop and protect the sticks. The other wrinkle to this is we're not rushing all 4 of these guys. We're going to rush 3, this guy, and this guy. Number 50 here is a spy. So he's just watching Patrick Mahomes, and if Patrick Mahomes scrambles, he's going to follow him out of the pocket and try to wrap him up and make a tackle. The nice thing about showing the pressure here, though, is that Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith are ready to double team and take him out of the play, but because he doesn't go at all, it creates one-on-ones with everyone else while Creed and Trey Smith have to quickly move to try to help them out. So Von Miller's going to get a one-on-one, and he is just going to spin move, take him out, and force Patrick Mahomes to be uncomfortable, have to move in the pocket, and try to make a throw on the run. Sky Moore here at the top is going to be running just a drag concept here into the flat. Mahomes is going to get to it late because of the pressure, but because he has man coverage here and sees the man leading behind him, you'd think it would be open. But because Taron Johnson here is just in a zone, he's just watching Mahomes. And as soon as he sees Sky Moore, he is going to break down and try to break up this pass. He's actually able to get there fast enough to straight up undercut it, pick off Patrick Mahomes, and seal the game and a victory for Buffalo. These are the type of concepts that Buffalo needs to have in their back pocket to try to steal the win. This play is so good because it focuses on the weaker parts of the O-line. It created one-on-ones with the tackles, but it also means that there's a man who could stop the run with Mahomes, and it creates sort of a confusion that Mahomes might be forced to throw into coverage because he thinks he has a clear out against man coverage on that boundary from Juju Smith-Schuster, but it's not a clear out if they're in zone. Great defensive play. One of my favorites and one that I think about a lot, actually. Hopefully they have stuff like this cooked up for this Sunday. It's pretty tough to take away anything from that Eagles-Rams game because of how crazy the weather was, but the easiest thing to take away is that Saquon Barkley is every bit the MVP candidate that he is hyped up to be. Just multiple runs. He rushed over 400 yards in both games against the Rams, which is just insane. I think it's even over 450. And it just makes it that much easier for him to run when you have Hurts threatening to run as well. Now, I am a bit worried that Hurts has been so banged up over the last couple weeks. He had the 2 weeks out with the concussion. He looked rusty against the Packers. He looked a lot better early on against the Rams, and I thought that they were going to be perfectly fine. But then he got hit in the knee, and he was really struggling. He lost his mobility, and because of that, he kind of was panicking and just taking bad sacks throughout the game. And the Rams defensive line is really good, but they don't win super fast all the time. Like, a lot of the sacks that they got against Darnold and Hurts were sacks that were allowed because the quarterback is standing there for 3 full seconds without getting rid of the ball and can't scramble. So I think that they'll do okay against the Commanders D-line, even if Hurts still doesn't have full mobility back. But it is a worrying point that he can't just go extend the play and run easily if that knee is still bugging him. Obviously, the defense is electric, even in that environment, where it was so difficult to move around. They were making plays left and right, and unfortunately, the offense kind of let them back in because they couldn't convert late. They had that stupid play-action play where they rolled out Hurts on a bad knee, and he rolls out right into a defender, and it's like, what's he going to do about that? If he throws the ball, the clock is dead, and then if he takes the sack, then there's no way you're converting this on third down. So it was just kind of a lose-lose situation that allowed the Rams back in with a last chance to score and potentially win the game. Also, thanks to the missed extra points, that kicker situation has me very nervous. But the defense stepped up to the challenge. They made the plays that they needed to, and they made some really amazing throws that looked nearly impossible to defend. So that's the type of play that's going to be needed to get past this defense, and we've kind of already seen Daniels do it once before. They also lost Quinyon Mitchell, though, early on, and you got to wonder if maybe that defense would have stifled things just that much faster if Quinyon was in. From what I'm seeing, the shoulder injury is not going to be a long-term one. I think as of right now, he's questionable for Sunday, but I think the expectation is that he should be able to make the game. And I think if both Hurts and Quinyon Mitchell are there Sunday and healthy, you have to feel pretty good about the Eagles' chances of closing out the game and heading to the Super Bowl. Now, as far as their matchup specifically with the Commanders, obviously they've already played them twice. The Commanders' run defense has not been very good. They've allowed a lot of running, both in the Lions and Buccaneers game, but they've been able to stay on the field on offense and take advantage of notable turnovers on defense. So the big thing for the Eagles, you don't have to score on every drive because your defense is going to get stops. You can trust your defense to get stops. You don't need to score on every single drive. You need to not turn this ball over. In the Lions game, it felt like the Commanders were selling out on first down to stop the run, and then they would back off second and third down to try to stop the pass. And they wanted to force the Lions into feeling like they had to pass it, even when they didn't. And then they would take advantage of whatever matchup that they got. Goff and Hurts are kind of similar quarterbacks in that sense, where it's like if you force them to just drop back and pass it over and over and over again, and you play good pass defense, they're not going to fit it into a mailbox the same way a Josh Allen and a Patrick Mahomes will. So the big thing I would focus on as the Eagles is just because it's second and long does not mean you can't run it. Especially with Saquon Barkley. He can turn a 2nd and 8 into 3rd and 1 or a 15, 16-yard gain at the drop of a hat. I would feel pretty comfortable mixing in runs on 2nd and long looks, for sure. If the Eagles can convert and limit drives, that's going to be their best way to success. The defense is going to get some stops. You can trust them for that, and don't miss the kicks when you get them, because those 2 extra points really made this week's game very interesting. The Commanders are probably the hottest team in the playoffs right now. They just have so much momentum, not only to win that game in Tampa Bay against a really good Tampa team. I mentioned before I thought that they were primed for a run. Turns out it was the Commies that were primed for the run. But then to take that momentum and head into Detroit and just do what they did, just absolutely ridiculous. What a game from Cliff Kingsbury. The offensive game plan was literally perfect. I mentioned I was kind of worried that there was no real way for the Lions to prepare for that type of offense, for that type of player. There's just so few people like Jayden Daniels. Like, you can't just bring some guy in and play against him in practice and simulate what it's like to play against Jayden Daniels. So it was a real difficulty for them to create a defensive game plan, and then even if they had a good defensive game plan, I don't think we got to see it because of the injuries that were sustained early on. But the Commanders did everything they could to take advantage of it. Like I said before, they sold out a lot on first down runs, and sometimes they broke a couple, and a lot of times they didn't. And then because they didn't on 2nd and 9, they felt like they had to pass it. And that's the situation where the pass defense for the Commanders, which I think is actually rather good, is able to step up and make those plays that they needed to, undercut routes, and doing a pretty good job. One of the most notable things in that Lions game to me was the way they kept pressure off of Daniels. I heard a really great line from Brett Coleman where he said, the QB is your ceiling and the O-line is your floor. If they're not blocking, then no matter who's back there, that's as bad as your team could be. But if they can block, then it's on your quarterback. How good is your quarterback? How can he elevate this team? And so I think the Washington Commanders have one of the widest margins between their ceiling and the floor. If that offensive line can step up and stop Jalen Carter, who is just a game wrecker, can stop Nolan Smith, who's just a game wrecker, then Jayden Daniels can kind of sit in that pocket, find the holes in coverage, identify it, and take his shots and control the game. But if Nolan Smith is beating his guy in under 2 seconds, if Jalen Carter is shedding and just wrapping him up in the backfield, like, you're just not even going to have a chance. So it's going to come down to, can that O-line block? And can Cliff Kingsbury come up with a game plan to make sure that that D-line has to hesitate? Can they fit in the screens and the quick game and the run game, the play action, all those things that are going to make that defensive line hesitate just a half second more, and just that extra half second can be enough time for Jayden Daniels to find Terry McLaurin deep and take the shot. In the last Eagles matchup, Jayden Daniels scored a whopping 22 points in the fourth quarter to make that comeback and win. Now, granted, no Jalen Hurts. Kenny Pickett was in there. I don't know how easy doing that would be with Jalen Hurts in there compared to Kenny Pickett, but it still happened, and it happened against a really damn good defense. Right now here in the playoffs, not counting the end of half like kneel outs, the Commanders are scoring on 68.8% of their drives, which is ridiculous. But they also missed a short field goal they should have hit, and if they had hit that field goal, they'd be scoring points on 75% of their drives, which is absolutely just insane. Like, you don't see numbers like this. I don't think there's any question that this is the best offense in the playoffs right now. The question comes, can they overcome the best defense in the playoffs right now? And if they can keep these types of numbers up, if they can score 30 plus points, I'm really starting to question on if the Eagles can actually keep up with that. Now, as for my picks, I think I really have to go with the Chiefs in Kansas City. I know a lot of people are saying, oh, it's Josh Allen's year. This is the best Buffalo team that they've ever had. And I agree with that stuff. I mean, the team is really, really good. Josh Allen has been fantastic. But it's one of those, like, we always end up here and it always goes the same way. I feel like I'd be silly to pick against the house in this situation. I think it'll be a close game. Kansas City wins by 2-3 points, because that's normally how this goes. But in the end, I do think it's Kansas City and Patrick Mahomes to the Super Bowl. The Eagles and Commanders game is a lot more difficult for me to predict because of just how good this Commanders offense is right now and how weird the Eagles offense is right now, mostly due to health and Jalen Hurts. But, you know, whenever you're stuck on a question like this, usually the saying defense wins championships comes to mind, and I'd be a fool to pick the Commanders defense over the Eagles defense. So I am going to go with the Eagles, and we get a nice Super Bowl rematch. But we'll see what happens this weekend. Let me know what you guys are thinking. I might make a video talking about the teams that were eliminated this week and their futures, but I really just wanted to focus on the remaining teams for this one. Hope you guys all enjoy one more weekend of football before the Super Bowl, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace!